I never intended to make a video where I talk about some topic or talk over some gameplay. YouTube was just a trick for me to stay motivated, play games and have closure when I complete them, knowing I can always come back to them in video format. Yet here I am, writing a script, thinking about how to say what I have in mind to best get my point across, compelled by an unexpected experience. I want to talk about a game I discovered more than 5 years ago. It didn't get a lot of marketing or publicity, as far as I remember. Now that I look back, I see that there was some coverage, but its reach had been severely low. I wouldn't have even known the game existed if it wasn't for an indie mouse video. The game had a unique art style. It caught my eye from the start. And being fond of tactical RPGs, it really looked like something I'd like to play. So I wishlisted it and ended up buying it on a sale. I never got the urge to play it, but it was always in the back of my mind. Having played The Darkest Dungeon, I always got the feeling that it would be similarly tedious, which is the same reason I can't make myself play the second installment of The Darkest Dungeon, but that's besides the point. I got to play many great games in 2025, to name two, Expedition 33 and Yakuza 0. Absolutely amazing experiences, but I got oversaturated. Wanted to have a break from big games, play something else, something smaller, less intense, just for me, something that I wouldn't even upload to YouTube. So the time finally came for Othercide, and I was very pleasantly surprised. First, a few warnings. Othercide is classified as a horror game. The horror aspects can be obvious, like the enemies you encounter or the visual effects, and not so obvious, depending on your interest in the story and events of the game. You can play this game as a pure tactical video game experience and the horror part will not matter, only picking through the aesthetics. Apart from this, there is a bit of nudity, but nothing too serious. Warnings aside, let's set some expectations. There will be no major spoilers. The game has some really nice surprises and I do not intend to ruin those, so I will speak in general terms and about content up to somewhere around the game's half point. I will describe the mechanics, talk about the game look, progression, etc. And finally, why this game left such a strong impression on me and why I believe it is severely underrated. Othercide in its core is a tactical role-playing game. The tutorial at the start of any playthrough explains the mechanics perfectly. You control units. They have HP or health points and AP, action points. The unit dies if its HP reaches 0 and it uses AP to perform actions like moving or using a skill. Units also have an inherent dodge chance, a way to completely avoid attacks, and armor, which serves to reduce incoming damage. A neat addition is the so-called timeline, which tells you when units will act. Skills come in a few different flavors. Instant actions are performed immediately. Delayed actions end your turn and are executed after a certain delay. Interruptions stop an enemy attack and launch a counterattack. And the final skill type is the reaction, which triggers when a certain condition is met, for example, an enemy taking damage from an ally. Your units start with 100 AP. There are ways to increase this value, but more on that later. Leaving at least 50 AP before ending your turn pushes you 50 initiative units to the midpoint of the timeline. Using more than that is called an action points burst and pushes you back 100 units on the timeline. And that's about it for the combat part. The tutorial lets you experiment with a variety of skills and you get an achievement if you manage to beat all enemies in it. After learning about the combat mechanics, the game introduces the so-called Chrono map. This is the main hub of the game. From here you can face bosses, select missions, enter the inner void, proceed to the next day and end the current run and start a new one. The first thing you are taught is how to create new units. In Othercide, this is called germinating daughters. This is one of the ways the Vitae currency can be used. Once you commit to this, you can pick a name for the daughter and her class. You pick between the melee fighter role called Blade Master, the range support role called Soul Slinger, and the tank role, Shield Bearer. More on the topic of daughters later. Next you learn how to select missions called synapses. The hunt mission is the first and simplest one. You have a set number of enemies you need to defeat in order to complete it. Once you do, your daughters gain experience and sometimes traits, and you return to the Chrono map. Each run is called a recollection. A recollection ends if you have no way to continue, if you lose to a boss or choose to end it yourself. With each completed mission, you get shards which are used to activate power-ups called remembrances, which you unlock as you defeat bosses and play through the game. This allows you to progress further with each recollection. Recollections consist of a set number of chapters, also referred to as eras. Each era consists of 7 days. You start at day 1 and after you close at least one synapse, you can move to the next day. Any daughter that participates in closing a synapse can no longer do that during the same day. Some days bring unique effects that last the following few days, and the boss is revealed on the 4th day, enabling the option to confront it earlier.
Cut deeper. Deeper still? The answer hides, buried in the flesh.
Otherwise, the boss attacks and must be faced on the 7th day. As daughters level up, they get to learn new skills. You pick between 2 options for each unlocked skill. Each daughter starts with the 2 base skills of her class and learns new skills at levels 2, 5, 10 and 15. Once germinated, stats are randomly generated, so some daughters may have slightly more attack whereas others more health. Stats grow as daughters level up. Traits, however, are obtained randomly after closing synapses. These are permanent effects that can increase damage, AP, boost gained experience, provide buffs to allies and debuffs to enemies and much more. But in general, they make the daughters more powerful and valuable to keep alive. The only way to heal, apart from the automatic one on the easier Dream difficulty, is to sacrifice another daughter of the same or higher level. The good thing is that if you end up doing this, the healed daughter will get a special trait from her sacrificed sister, increasing her value even more. If a daughter dies, the only way to bring her back is to use a resurrection token, which is a rare resource you can only get from a rescue mission, certain remembrances, and if you play on the Dream difficulty. The final part of the inner void is the Codex. Here you can read more about the different characters, about the memories of the mother, and about the events that have triggered while playing through the game. This part is super useful. The character entries offer invaluable insights about tactics you can apply while facing different enemies. But even more useful are the memories, which drop from defeated enemies. Not only do they reveal more about the mother's past, but you can use them as power-ups for your daughter's moves, for a certain amount of Vitae. And if combined well, they can give you a great advantage during combat. Closing synapses means facing enemies. The type of enemies dictates the required tactics to neutralize them efficiently and minimize damages. Let's take the Hunter as an example. This is a heavy unit with lots of health that can reach far with its jump and deal significant damage, then use a delayed action to force any daughters around it to keep their distance. This makes it obvious that it is a high priority target. If you pay attention, you will see that once it ends its turn, it is pushed back quite far on the timeline. So most often you have 2 turns with each daughter to deal with it. In case there are other targets that take priority and the hunter cannot be dealt with promptly, the shield bearer's slam attack will push it even further back on the timeline. It can't hurt you if its turn never comes. There is a solid variety of enemies, not too much to overwhelm with complexity, but just enough to make every encounter unique and rewarding. And the fact that the game gives you all the info you need to learn and properly plan is really nice. Each synapse is a different puzzle, and completing them perfectly is very satisfying. So, you've raised your daughters. They've learned skills, acquired traits, memories boost their abilities. You've even made sacrifices. It is time to face the boss of the current era. The first boss you face is the Surgeon, and it paints a great picture of how bosses work in Othercide.
Mercy.
Each boss has unique skills that give the battle a unique twist. The challenge is not only to reduce the boss's health to zero, but also to play around their skills to minimize damage. In other words, each boss requires a different tactic in order to defeat it. All you need to know is available from the start of the fight. Inspecting the boss and his minions and reading through the skills gives you an idea of what it is capable of and what is the trick to defeat it. For the Surgeon, it's quite simple. Eliminating his caretakers makes him vulnerable by not having any extra armor. Then you just go all out on him, being careful not to get damaged by his delayed actions or reactions in his second phase. The second boss, the Deacon, is a bit more complicated.
Secrets. Must not know my secrets. The power of prayer protects me. On your knees before me, so I may absolve you of your sins.
You face it with 4 daughters, and on his turn he prevents 3 of them from moving and targets the one that is furthest from him. This makes it smart to keep your daughters close, have more ranged fighters in your lineup, and pay attention to how your daughters are positioned on the map. Which is not even a foolproof strategy, as he can attack and push back your daughters, causing them to take extra damage if they hit an obstacle or one of their sisters, causing massive damage and often worse outcomes. But you get the idea. Bosses become progressively harder and trickier to play against, and the final boss is in a league of its own, almost guaranteed to force you into a new recollection on your first encounter. So, what is it about this game that moved me so much to speak out and make this video? Well, it all started at the main menu. I always stay a bit, getting a feel for the game. I liked what I saw. The art style, the gentle music, I was swallowed by the scene. There was so much being said with no words whatsoever, but there was more. When the music picked up, adding vocals, then an electric guitar, something lit up. Little did I know back then that the game was already trying to tell me that it's full of surprises. So, I started a new game. The intro cutscenes were intriguing, the tutorial was just enough and I delved in. The first missions were quite easy, so I didn't pay too much attention to the tactics aspect. But, when I first read the characters part of the codex, I noticed something interesting. Each enemy has a unique behavior. Some target the furthest unit, some the one with least health. So I tried using this information and the tactical combat gained so much more depth. I loved this. It wasn't all random, it had a method to it. Some games hide info about mechanics and leave too much to be figured out, or you even need to consult a wiki in order to learn and get better. Not this one, not Othercide. Eventually, I got to the first boss, the Surgeon. Figuring the trick to beat him was not that hard. I had all the knowledge I needed as soon as his minions made their first move. Remove the units that give him armor, make him vulnerable, take him out. And as the fight was nearing the end, there was this amazing moment when the interruption skills finally clicked with me. I avoided a ton of damage and the music picked up, adding vocals and building up to the finale of the fight. This sealed the deal for me. Such moments, memories that stay with you long after the game is finished, is how I can easily tell that I'm playing a great game. At this point, if the rest of the game would have stayed the same, I would have been completely content. But this was far from everything it had in store. I noticed that after you beat the surgeon, you unlock the remembrance that makes your newborn daughter start at level 4. I was struggling with the missions in the second chapter, so I started a new recollection. Armed with the lessons I learned and powered up by the remembrances I unlocked, I pushed quite far. The complexity increased gradually. The second boss is more complex mechanically, but it taught me that I can learn and adapt on the spot by inspecting units. The progression felt so natural, I didn't even notice it. Before I knew it, I was about to face the third boss. This boss intrigued me. At this point, pieced together from the loading screen messages, voice-acted dialogue,
Here you will remain, sinner.
character entries, it was obvious that the surgeon and the deacon were devilish creatures that did atrocious things to the suffering's chosen one. The third boss twists this concept. I won't spoil any details, but this change in dynamic alluded that there is more to the story than I initially thought. And during the fight there was another surprise that caught me off guard and created another awesome moment that I will not be forgetting anytime soon. Another new recollection, storming through the first 3 chapters, and I was back where I left off, stronger than before, both in might and wisdom. I decided not to read any of the memories until I gathered all from a single set. And I remember it to this day, the few days in the span of which I completed the sets and read through them. It put some things into perspective. In today's time, with all the AI-generated content, or should I say slop, there was something so well crafted by human hand. I was dazed. The writing was incredible, the story told through segments that are neither short nor long, but just enough to carry their meaning so efficiently. And then I had a revelation. The visuals, the sound, the writing, all amazing, combined together into an even greater form of art. A game so well polished and consistent that it leaves you in awe. The way of storytelling felt similar to what the Souls games popularized. Pieces of information scattered here and there, loading screen messages, dialogue, characters, memories, events. I never could piece these things together and needed a long YouTube video to understand what is going on. But somehow, this was not the case with Othercide. The hints are so efficient, so well presented, so well connected. It all fits together perfectly. And what I absolutely love is that there are consistent answers to most, if not all, questions you can think of. Who are you? How does this world work? What is its history? Who is the mother? And don't get me started on the little details. I keep noticing them even in my second playthrough. For example, the scarves the daughters wear, they represent their health. Or that the more memories you collect, the images become less skull-shaped jumbles and more clear paintings. And there are so many similar little details with absolutely no real function, but made with such care that you can't help but feel the heart and soul that was invested into creating the game. Even the lyrics of the songs from the soundtrack are so carefully crafted to perfectly contribute to the whole. And finally, on the most controversial topic, the final boss. It's ridiculously strong, even unfair. It took me a few tries. I'll talk a bit more about it in the next part. But in my view, it is a sensible and worthy climax to the game. And the reward is so fitting. The last remembers in the list. And the realization that you were so caught up in the conflict unfolding in front of you that you haven't asked the simplest question. And when you read its description, its duality hits you in the face. It is the most insignificant yet important thing you will ever find out about this game. When I was doing research for this video, I noticed a few things. The game I played looked quite different from the one in the promo materials and on release. I bet it also played differently and as a result didn't really cause a stir. There are a lot of reviews and comments about things that are bad about it, or that it is too hard, or that the mechanics are too punishing. And honestly, this is a great and terrible thing at the same time. Terrible because a lot of people missed out on a good game, but more importantly, great because this made the developers aware of its shortcomings and told them exactly what they need to focus on to polish it to perfection. And I'm so happy that they decided to stick to it and not leave it in that early state, which further proves that this game was truly made with love and care. I compiled some complaints from different sources. Steam reviews, Reddit posts, game reviews. The most common complaint was the grind. I'm not entirely sure if the game was balanced differently at release, but one of the things I love about this game is the fact that progression feels so well paced. Grinding levels or traits never felt required. I will make a parallel with the Souls games. You can beat a boss by learning its patterns, or you can beat a boss by farming levels. You can guess which method I prefer. A recurring theme was also that combat is too slow, but it can be sped up from the menu, something I used frequently, especially when starting a new recollection. The rest of the criticism was about level variety, difficulty spikes, not having progress on remembrances, the story not making sense, the sacrifice mechanic, and the final boss. For some of these, I never really felt like they were issues. Level design was a complementing visual, never the primary focus for me, and I never felt like I got bored from a level, or that the repetitiveness subtracted from my experience. The combat and tactics were the central part I was focusing on. A similar case can be made with not having any progress indicators for remembrances. These get unlocked as you play the game. You don't have that much agency on how fast they are unlocked, and I'd even say there's no need to worry about it at all. They are part of the progression, and you can easily beat the game without unlocking all of them. On the topic of progression, if you do your studying and play smart, difficulty spikes do not exist, with the sole exception of the last boss. Enemies scale up in power gradually. Bosses can be a challenge, but 9 out of 10 times you can avoid being overwhelmed by making the right choices. In fact, the consistency of the difficulty comes from the fact that random factors like the chance for critical hits or dodges is a secondary element, never pushing you into a corner because the game just decided so. I get the feeling the sacrifice mechanic was a big turnoff for a lot of people. Sacrificing one unit to heal another, and you've spent so much time bringing them up. But to me, again, this is something that is here but never the main focus. If you play well, you will rarely need to do this. I mostly used it to power up my daughters with the special traits you get depending on the sacrificed daughter. For example, sacrificing a Blade Master will give the healed daughter extra attack and critical damage. And to make it even more forgiving, you can even revive your sacrificed daughters with the resurrection token. And to top it all off, if you play on the Dream difficulty, daughters will be healed automatically each day, and you will also get free resurrection tokens. I realize this type of storytelling isn't for everyone. For me it clicked, but that may not be the case for many people. The game gives plenty of information to piece things together. My opinion is that everyone playing the game should at least give it a try. It requires a bit of patience, attentiveness and logic, but the story is much like a puzzle. Many pieces, each with their own place, and it's quite satisfying to complete it and see the full picture. The last complaint, I must admit, is completely valid. The last boss. This is the only difficulty spike I felt in the game. To put it simply, it is not fair. It is the greatest challenge in the game. You will lose to it unless you do research outside of the game before your first try. But it is definitely doable and you can think of a strategy to defeat it by yourself. The one that is most recommended didn't feel right to me, so I tried a few different strategies and it eventually worked. And if you want to fight fire with fire, you can always just Alt F4 the game and the fight will be restarted. I'm usually against such things when playing games, but if you think you have a strategy that can work, but due to some mistake or randomness you didn't pull it off properly, go for it. To me, this still makes perfect sense. It's the big crescendo of the game, the insurmountable obstacle at the end. It's fueled by everything that has happened so far. Some of the central and recurring themes in Othercide are suffering, memories, and immortality. There are other, less prominent ones like prejudice, loss, responsibility, and many more. These themes are used excellently in the game's setting and story. I don't have a great memory. I am quite forgetful. But strong memories are formed when our emotions light up and our senses get stimulated. And I can't help but treasure these strong memories, as no matter how forgetful I am, I know they will always be a part of me. This game, Othercide, managed to create such strong memories. It connected with me on a level I never expected, and because it was so underrated, I felt the need to create this video. I wanted to spark the same curiosity I felt back when I first saw this game. I wanted more people to experience it, because that's what it is, and that is what games are supposed to be. An experience, even better, an unforgettable experience, one you will always remember.
I'm begging you to help me, 'cause I will make it all alone. I leave you all my beating. I can barely move. I just don't know how. Trapped in silence, screaming and stunned. No one can hear. It's so unfair. I gave it all with all my heart. I lost it's tearing up my soul. I suffer through life. Have you lost your mind? I gave you all my life. There's nothing left. I've been here for a while. There's nothing here, nothing to see. They'll come again. You're not real, and I'm not either. White, no black, no red. Not really anything. Blind figures across a veil.